Hi, this is Andy Price of Easy Data Transform, and I'm going to show you how you can flexibly and easily create a test data set to your own specifications. Now, normally Easy Data Transform is used for wrangling existing data, so merging, splitting, cleaning and so on for existing data sets, maybe CSV or Excel files, but it can also be used to generate data, and that's what we're going to do here. So I want to create a data set with 1,000 first names, last names and dates of birth. So to start with, we'll go and get some popular names from the internet. So I found a page here that has 300 of the most popular American first names. So let's just click on the first one and shift click on the last one and then copy it to the clipboard and then paste it into Easy Data Transform as a new data set. This data set doesn't have a header, so let's turn that off. And now let's split the column using a space delimiter for the splitting. So I'll add space as a delimiter. And now we can see it's created two new columns, one of which has just got the first names. Now we don't need those two other columns, so let's get rid of them. And again, we'll use a transform to do that. So we'll click on Remove Cols. And we've got rid of the first two columns. Because I've got auto run checked, then any changes are made automatically as soon as I've finished making adjustments to the user interface. You might want to turn this off for really big data sets. Okay, so I've got a list of all the male names now that I'm going to use for my test data, and let's do the same for female names. So there's also a set of female names here. Oops, let's grab the right ones. So the top 300 female names. Shift click and copy. And we'll paste that in as a new data set, and then we'll do the same thing again. So split col, using space as a delimiter, and then remove cols to get rid of the first two columns. Okay, and I've forgotten there's no header here, so we'll just go back to clipboard, uncheck that, and we'll see that the changes propagate through. So now I've got tables of the most popular 300 names for men and women. Let's merge them together, and we're going to merge them one on top of each other using a stack transform. So with both those items selected, I click stack, and we can see now it's merged with the men's names on top and the women's names underneath, and I've got 600 items now. Now I'm going to add a row number to use as a key for the lookup table. Okay, so I've got an ascending row number which goes from 1 up to 600. So now I'm going to generate 1,000 random values and use that to look up in this lookup table. So let's open an editor. Now normally Easy Data Transform reads in data sets and manipulates, merges them, filters them and so on, but in this case we're going to create a very trivial data set. So we'll put in a header row and we'll put a first and a last value. Okay, so it's very simple, 1 to 1,000. I'm going to copy that. Again, I'm going to paste it in as a data set, and then I'm going to use sequence to expand that out so we get all of those values. So we get 1,000 rows. Okay, I don't particularly care what these values are, just that I've created 1,000 rows, and then I'm going to use a random transform, and I'm going to create 1,000 random integers between 1 and 600 so I can look them up in the table. Okay, so here I've created 1,000 values between 1 and 600. When I do a lookup, I need the data set that I'm looking up in to be underneath the other data set. So I'm going to move this data set to the top, and then I'm going to do a lookup transform. Oops. Let's just do that again. So I select those two and do lookup. So I'm selecting from the random value that I've created, and I'm using the row number in the lookup table as my key, and then I'm using the names here as the values. So if I look at the data set now, we can see we have these 1,000 first names just randomly generated. Okay, so now I need some last names, so I'm going to do a very similar process. So here I've got 50 common last names. Okay, it's not a very clean list because it's got adverts and all sorts of other things embedded in it, but that shouldn't matter, hopefully. Grab these 50 names just for an example. I'm going to create a data set by pasting them in from the clipboard. And I'm going to do similarly to previously. I'm going to split the column at the space, and then I'm going to remove the first two columns. Oops, and again I have to remember that the first one is not a header. Okay, so it's easy to go back and change things if you've made a mistake. Okay, so now we've got 50 last names. And then let's add a row number to use as a key. And then we're going to do another lookup. So let's add another set of random values in a column. We've got 50 last names to choose from. So we'll set this from 1 to 50. And then we'll do a lookup using the table below as a lookup table. So we'll select both of them and click lookup. So we're going to use the last column, which is already selected, and then we're going to look up the row number, and then we're going to use the names. So it's already correctly set up. So now we've got a first name and a last name, both randomly set. And perhaps we want another field that's the first name and the last name separated by a space. So we can quickly do that. We just need the concat columns transform. I haven't bothered renaming these columns so far, but we can do that later. Oh, it's got a comma, so let's put a space there. Okay, so we've got a plausible last name now. And for this simple demonstration, let's also add a date of birth. So I'm going to add a new column. I'm going to call it base because it's the base for the date of birth. And I'm going to give it a date of the first date of birth. So let's call it 1960, 1st of January. Okay, so we have a new column. And then I'm going to add random values onto that. Let's add random, and again we want it to be an integer. And let's add between 0 and 3,000 days to the 1st of January 1960. And we can add those using the calculate transform. So we're going to add to base this new random value. And now we can see we have a series of dates here randomly between 1960 and 3,000 days after that. Right, so let's get rid of some of these columns we don't need now. So click remove cols. Okay, so now we've got first name, last name, full name, date of birth, and lastly let's rename these columns as something useful. We'll use the rename cols transform. Okay, so now we have some useful column names. Now we can output that to various different file formats, for example XML, JSON, CSV and so on, but let's just output it to Excel. We could do it to various other formats including JSON, XML and CSV, but Excel will do for now. And then we can have a look at what the Excel file looks like. Okay, so here's our data set. Now obviously this is only a very small example, but you could easily generate millions of rows of data and much more complex data sets than this. Easy Data Transform is available for Windows and Mac. You can download a fully functional free trial from our website. It only takes a few seconds and you don't even have to give us your email address.